this world, people feel lost in a sea of ideas. Which ones should we accept? Stay tuned because you're listening to Veracity Hill, striving for truth on faith, politics, and society. Here is your host, Kurt Jarris.
On another episode of Veracity Hill, where we are striving for truth on faith, politics, and society. You'll see here that we're not exactly in our office this week. We are on location at the Moody Church in downtown Chicago, and I have the great pleasure of being joined by one of my former professors, Dr. Clay Jones.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Kurt.
Thanks, Clay. So today we're going to be exploring the question, why does God allow evil? And before that, let me again just briefly mention some announcements that we have. Veracity Hill right now is doing a fundraiser. We're looking for monthly donors, and our goal is $800 a month, and we are 15% of the way there. So this past week we've got a few more people to chip in, and I want to encourage you as well to go to our website, veracityhill.com/patron, and consider supporting our cause and our mission. And so now the second announcement I have then is to mark off November 3 and 4 on your calendars, because here in Chicagoland we're going to be doing a conference on the Protestant Reformation. We're going to be exploring the good, the bad, and the ugly of the events that transpired 500 years ago, commemorating that event. And for some of you, you might not have all that much background information, so there will be talks exploring what that's about, but also maybe considering some of the misconceptions people have, and perhaps even the shortcomings that the reformers didn't quite hit upon. And so we'll be exploring different things. We've got all sorts of different scholars coming in. And so again, mark off November 3 and 4 on your calendars, and I hope that you'll be able to join us. All right, so today we're talking about why does God allow evil? And this is a question, Clay, that you have been teaching and speaking on for many years now. It was a class that I took at Biola. And so now you finally got it into book form. And it really is a broad question. And there are different ways in which people are seeking a response. Sometimes people can be seeking an intellectual, academic response, and other times they may be just looking for a hug. But the problem of evil is made known to them in a relational way. And so before we get into some of the more I've got some sort of nitpicky questions, if we will. I want to ask you about natural disasters. We've had hurricanes, and now we've also had the loss of a good man, Nabil Qureshi. Yes. So why do bad things happen to good people? Before we get into those questions, give us a little bit of a broad overview about the problem of evil here.
Well, I think that I'm going to just say free will has an awful lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And I always kid when I lecture. I say, if God wanted to create beings that had free will, he has to allow evil. I mean, he has to. Because you can't create a free being and not allow them to use their free will wrongly. I mean, that's just as logical as it gets. Mm-hmm. But I find that people don't really understand the significance or the value of free will. And I mean Christians, they don't understand it. How valuable is it? What is it really? Mm. And because they don't understand the value and the significance of free will, even though if you ask the average Christian, why does God allow evil? And they'll go, oh, free will. But they really haven't thought through to where that's compelling to them, what it means to give beings free will and to have them have free will. You can't, for instance, tell your daughter that she can go out on a date with a punk down the street and then chain her to a heavy kitchen appliance. That's not giving her free will. That free will actually has to entail allowing people to use it wrongly. Now, God could have created us as beings that have lesser free will. He could have created us all like with a free will like a golden retriever. We're sitting there panting, and he could pat our heads. Yeah. But if he wants really significantly free beings, then here we are. We're significantly free beings, and that means that we can use our free will very rightly or very wrongly. And so I am arguing for free will, and also, in a sense, I'm arguing what I present is I'm arguing in a sense for soul building, that we're learning lessons here that are valuable for eternity. Okay. And because Anyway, and I think that we're going to have free will in heaven, but not sin, and for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons is because we're learning how stupid sin is here. And we're learning, and at the judgment, we're going to learn a lot more about the stupidity of sin. And I'll throw just one more thing on that.
Sure.
I've never seen anybody actually try to do this, and I don't know how long the judgment's going to be. I don't know. How would I know? But just a thought experiment. If there's 7 billion people alive today, roughly speaking.
Yeah.
And if every person was to be judged for 10 minutes, that's 133,000 years. So that's going to be, because people ask me, well, what about children and stuff that, or children. So I was just asked, what about children that are aborted? They didn't learn anything. Well, I dare say, and my answer to that is, well, I think after 133,000 years of the judgment, they're going to learn quite a bit. 1, 2, also, they'll probably be able to see their own murder. That'd be quite an education, too. And the motives that went into why they were murdered, and into the society that caused that, and so on.
Yeah, right.
I think that, anyway, so basically, but this is knowledge that's important for our eternity, because I think God is teaching us, among other things, that just sin is a really stupid thing to do.
So why is it, and maybe you can rehash this out, so why is it that God couldn't just create a world where humans had free will but never sinned?
It's funny. In other words, how could God create a world where humans have free will and never use it wrongly? The only way I think you could do that would be through determinism.
Okay.
And there are people, theological traditions that hold to determinism.
Right.
I don't. I'm a libertarian.
Yeah. Not politically libertarian in terms of the philosophical debate.
Thank you for that. Yes, I believe, and a libertarian, thanks for clarifying that, a libertarian is someone who believes that you can do other than you do. That you don't have to make the decisions that you do. And
for at least some life decisions, not all life decisions.
Yeah, sure, not all of them, of course. In fact, I always point out to people, well, you're saying God doesn't have sovereignty. No, I think God probably determines most things. He determined that I would be male. He determined that I would have blue eyes. He determined, I think he determines most things, but I don't think he determines every human's every thought and deed, such that they could never do other than they do. See, so I can believe, in fact, that God determines most things, but not everything.
Right.
A determinist, and this is where the language gets a little bit confusing to those that aren't used to it. A determinist is someone who believes that God determines everything. Right. There's nothing but that he did not determine. But that means then that when a man decides to torture to death the little girl next door, that every cut, bruise, penetration, burn, humiliation that he does, God so arranged the affairs of the universe that man couldn't not, he had to do those things. He couldn't not. And by the way, there's a lot of double negatives, as you know, when you talk about this, because what we tend to do in this debate is we say the man couldn't not do those things. Right. He had, and it's another way of saying he had to. He had to do those things, but he couldn't not, because God had so arranged the affairs of the universe. He had to do those things, and he had to desire to do those things. He couldn't not desire it, because God so arranged the affairs of the universe that he would want to do those things. And then you have actually some of them go so far as to say even God himself doesn't have free will.
Yeah.
When you do that, if you say that God could never do other than he did, then that means Auschwitz necessarily had to come out of the nature of God. Yeah. God could not have arranged a world where Auschwitz wouldn't happen. Yeah. Wow! I mean, to me, the implications of that. So anyway.
And so if God were to create a world with free will where no evil occurs, really, it's not free will.
Well, yeah, what they've done, what the determinists do, and this is usually in the serious Reformed camp, and I don't want to, let me just clarify. I respect these people. And the people I'm talking about is like John Piper. I respect him. I think he's a great guy, a great man, great Christian. R.C. Sproul, J.I. Packer.
Yeah.
They're determinists. I just want to say, I respect these men, and I think too often, and especially in Christian apologetics, we can demonize. I respect them. I just think they're wrong on this, and of course they would conversely they think I'm wrong.
Right.
But I'm just saying the implications for their view. What happens is R.C. Sproul then said, "I do not know the answer to the problem of evil, nor do I know anyone else who does." Well, and I think he's right, because if you think that God determines everything, well, why is he determining that people would torture each other to death? Why would he do that? So anyway, I think that's the trouble with it and what happens is the determinists then are redefining free will, and how they redefine it is free will for the determinist. They say you have free will, but the way they redefine it is free will only means that you're doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing what you want to do, even though God made you want to do that,
Right.
Then you have free will.
Yeah.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's move into some other areas here. So, on your model, you think there's a historical Adam, and that his sin brought about devastation and consequences into the world.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of those consequences?
Well, remember after Adam and Eve sinned, God looked at planet Earth and said, "I curse you." Right? Genesis 3. And God cursed the ground. What pestilence, what disease, what horror cannot have been unleashed from God looking at planet Earth and saying, "I curse you." Wow. And Romans 8 says all of creation is held in bondage and is looking forward to the revelation of the sons of God. Well, when did that bondage occur? Well, it occurred. Almost every theologian says it occurred when Adam sinned. That's
right.
That's when it occurred. Well, creation's messed up. We live in a fallen world. We live in a world of sickness and disease. And I'm going to tell you something, Kurt, that I really haven't talked to anybody about yet, but I am doing, my next book is probably going to be entitled, "How Does God Use Suffering?" And what I've come to a strange conclusion. God is doing all of humankind a great favor by creating so much suffering. And the reason he has to do it is, and this is what I've been spending my time studying, is every human on earth has an immortality project. This is the soul building theodicy. Well, no, this is a little different.
Okay.
This is a little different. Every human on earth, you and I, everybody you and I know, all the non-Christians, all the Christians, we all have an immortality projects. And what I mean by that is we're trying to find some way to live forever. Atheists are doing it through legacy. I'm going to do, my works are going to go on and continue.
Yeah, or through freezing themselves and...
That's another one. Scientific. That's another one. Scientific immortality. Having children. My children are going to go on forever. And they're trying to get glory for themselves, but they call it fame and renown, and they don't use the term glory very often. But what I'm saying is that what a weak kind of immortality. A super, and these atheists that are writing on the topic, they all agree. The Christians had true immortality. The atheists say this. The atheists say Christians had true immortality. But now, so what's my point? My point is look at how we're looking for immortality here, and what we're looking into for our children, through our legacy, through our accomplishments, that's our immortality. Could you imagine if all of us lived 900 years in good health? Nobody need God, right? I mean, who would need God at all, right? So the Lord actually, in a sense, is doing us all a favor by not allowing our immortality projects to succeed. So anyway,
now I've got one concern here is you said that it's a good that God has allowed suffering.
Yes.
And I just want to be careful here. So you're not saying though that God intricately orchestrates the suffering, right?
I mean, obviously in Scripture sometimes he does.
Sure.
I mean, obviously. But for the most part, no, I think he just cursed the world. I think he probably, in a sense, too, cursed it and went, okay, you just go on and try to live on and see how this goes. But I don't think that for the most part that God is going, I'm going to make, this suffering strike this person at this moment. I don't think that for the most part.
Okay.
Are there occasions? Oh yeah, sure.
Sure.
Absolutely. But not, I don't think for the most part that's how he's working.
So when God cursed the earth, that brought about disease, pestilence,
earthquakes,
everything.
tsunamis.
Yeah, okay, great. So people in this nation have been hit hard by hurricanes the past, I guess, month and a half here. So why is it then that God would allow hurricanes to devastate masses of populations?
Well, several things. First, natural laws must work in regular ways if our actions are going to have meaning. And our trouble is that we like to build on the beach, and we tend to build on floodplains. Frankly, we just do, because the beach is beautiful. I want to be close to the water.
Yeah.
We didn't want to be close to the water.
Yeah.
But the trouble with that is, being close to the water is, you're going to have these things. People used to, now they'll probably ask me about Harvey, but I was asked about Hurricane Katrina. Mm-hmm. Why did God allow Hurricane Katrina to destroy New Orleans? And I always say, well, let's think about it. We built the city below sea level, and we built it with walls that we knew could not withstand a hurricane above Category 3. When hurricane categories 4 and 5 were already a regular part of our existence.
Yeah.
In other words, it isn't like we thought that hurricanes only went to 3, and then when Katrina came along, they went, wow, they go higher, who knew? So we built a city below sea level with defenses that we knew for sure were inadequate to stop things that are a normal part of our experience. And and the scripture is in Proverbs 19:3, Solomon said, when a man's folly brings his way to ruin, his heart rages against the Lord. And so we do something stupid, like build a city below sea level with walls that we can't withstand forces that are common to our experience, and they go, why did God do that? Well,
So a lot of it here it can be
don't build on a floodplain. Now watch. We know this can happen in Houston. Just happen. It's horrible. And I prayed, as I'm sure most of the people watching this prayed for them.
Yeah.
But think about it just for a minute. They're going to rebuild.
Right.
They're rebuilding. It's not like they're going, wow, we've learned our lesson. And I'm not saying they shouldn't rebuild. These things are, this kind of hurricane only comes once, every century or who knows how long.
So ultimately, we humans collectively think, oh, it's still worth it for us to be here.
But then, the one in New Jersey, the hurricane that wiped out along the homes all along the beach.
Yeah.
Well, don't build at the beach. But it's like, I want to build at the beach. Okay, but then they're all insulted because hurricanes are a normal part of our experience.
Right.
And we need to be intelligent and react to that responsibly. And I, frankly, if I lived in Houston, I'd probably rebuild my house in Houston too, right? Fix it. I get it. Yep. But I'm just saying, this is the kind of thing that happens normally.
You're listening to Veracity Hill, striving for truth on faith, politics, and society.
Evangelical Christians are talking about hell. What if we believe what we believe because we've always believed it? What if the gospel is really a matter of life and death? We want you to open your mind, open your Bible, and rethink hell. At rethinkinghell.com, evangelicals look at what the Bible says about hell, putting conventional and controversial views to the test.
Have you heard of the Google Ad Grant for nonprofits? 501c3 nonprofit organizations can receive $10,000 per month in online advertising credit from Google, empowering you to share your message with the world. At Defenders Media, we partnered with Nonprofit Megaphone, an agency focused solely on Google Grant acquisition and management. They got us approved for the grant and now manage ad campaigns, bringing hundreds of new people to our websites each month. If you are eligible, Nonprofit Megaphone will acquire and manage the grant for you for a month for free to see if they can help you too. Visit nonprofitmegaphone.com to learn more.
Hello, I'm David Smith, the Executive Director of Illinois Family Institute, a state-based Christian pro-life and pro-family public policy organization. I want to invite you to join us as we seek to be salt and light to a dark and rapidly decaying culture. You can do that in a number of ways. For example, you can join our email list to get timely alerts and great cultural commentaries. You can like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, listen to our podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can attend one or more of the special events and forums we host in different parts of the state. We do all these things to encourage and equip Christians in Illinois. You see, we need you to help us fulfill our mission to boldly bring a biblical perspective to public policy. Our faith requires us to be bold, speak truthfully, and love our neighbors. Join us. Visit illinoisfamily.org to learn more.
So moving along from natural disasters, I want to maybe look at more of the personal side here of evil that some folks might be thinking about. So why is it that, say, God would create a world in which, a 2-year-old or 3-year-old suffers from a terminal illness? Why would God create a world like that?
Yeah, I have an article, as you may know, and then the article also is in my book, and the article is entitled, "Why Did God Let That Child Die?" And because that's one of the biggest questions. And the question, as I say in the book, is never vague. It's never general. I've never been asked in my life, not even once, why does God let children die? Yeah. I've never been asked that question. The question is always, why did God let 7-year-old Kaylee die of cancer? It's always very specific. And whenever I'm asked that question, I say, well, let's think about it just for a minute. It's not just Kaylee, right? You don't think God ought to let any child die of cancer, right? And they go, well, no, of course not. God shouldn't let any child die of cancer. They go, well, it's not just cancer, right? You don't think God should let children die from other diseases, do you? 100% of the time. Try it. Try it on when somebody says it. Try it. Say it's not just cancer. It's other. No, 100%. No, of course God shouldn't let children die of other diseases. Well, you don't think that God should let? Do you think God should let children be killed in accidents? No, of course not. 100%. Try it. And I just keep going through. Sure. And finally, as I keep going through analogy, thing after thing, you don't think they ought to be maimed or raped, right? No, of course God shouldn't let children be raped. Finally, I'll say, okay, to what age do you think children should be indestructible? And that most people laugh because it's ridiculous. Yeah. And anybody with half a brain has already seen through.
No, that's just not the way the world functions.
But then, see, how would you, if you just keep thinking, this is, just let me back up and then come back to the subject. This is a question of God should have arranged the universe differently. And when anybody says that, say, how should he? How should he arrange the universe differently? And then when they tell us, and then just, what will happen though is they're going to get frustrated. They almost always get angry and frustrated. But just pull it apart when they start giving it. Pull it apart.
If I were God, I would create a world like this.
How would you do? So what with children? God should have made it so children couldn't get killed. How would He do that? Yeah. What mechanisms does He put in place so children can't be injured or harmed or killed? How does He do that? Does He literally just make them indestructible? Until what age? I mean, could you imagine indestructible 3-year-olds? I mean, I kid, I oppose officially all forms of child abuse. There, so disclaimer. But you can have an indestructible 3-year-old that you could throw that child across the room, and he's coming back at you. Yeah. Because he's indestructible. And guess what? You're not. That child, man, could you indestructible? And he's coming back. It'd be like a Chucky kind of, I mean, it'd be this weird. He can do whatever he wants, He's coming.
Even then, in some crazy world, it's likely an impossible world where that could happen. Then the burden would just be moved. Oh well, why does God allow the 21-year-old?
Well, right. When do you? Whatever age. When does that stop? Yeah. And if you're gonna, because one woman blurted 12. I mean, she just kind of blurted 12. Does he really think that 13 years? And all of a sudden, so you've got indestructible children, right?
Yeah.
And you tell them, you could tell them, go out and play marbles in the freeway. You'll just bounce around a lot. You know, I mean, just go out and have fun.
Yeah.
You could free climbing. You want to go free climbing? Go free climbing. I mean, you're 11. In fact, you'd be begging your kids to go free climbing because, you know, I mean, because do whatever you want.
Right. So it's just unrealistic.
And then when they hit 13, all of a sudden the world's dangerous.
Yeah.
Well,
So bringing it back here to the young ones that are sick, and it hurts our souls.
and it hurts our immortality project. It endangers our immortality project of I'm going to live forever through my children. And let's just be honest here. Most humans, their children are their idols. They are. And God doesn't want us to have idols. It's not the way we should revere Him. And so what the death of some children does is it threatens our idols. And it puts things in proper perspective. And you have to realize that your children aren't safe. And your love for them and your worship even of them is endangered. And God, that's valuable knowledge for us here on earth. Oh, painful. We don't like it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to build a life without God, that's the kind of thing you build it on. My kids are going to live forever.
Yep. So you see that it's not, of course, it's not God that causes the child to get sick, but God has created a world in such a way that these sort of things happen, and it is sad.
I think that's right.
So dealing with that suffering can be a challenge and a call for pastoral care.
And Christians help each other.
Yeah.
Christians the Christian community can reach out and love each other through it.
Yep.
And it reminds us. I'm going to tell you a story. I don't think I've said this in a long, long time, or hardly ever. But there was a couple that went, and I happen to know this because they attend a friend of mine's church, but they really weren't walking with the Lord. And I don't know how many details I should give, but they went to Yosemite, and this was in the papers, and one of their children, maybe both or two of them were killed. They let them swim below Vernal Falls. They weren't really walking with the Lord. After that happened, man, they were on fire for Jesus. I do not find, by the way, the disaster or sickness or disease, I don't find a correlation on whether it draws people closer to the Lord or farther from Him.
Yeah, because people react differently.
I've watched this, Kurt, and you probably have. Just watch. Some people get closer. Some people go, so he's going to do that, then I don't want any part of it.
Right.
But I just don't see a correlation.
Right, you don't see more people doing this or the other. It really is.
I really don't.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, some people get bitter and turn from God, and others go, I need you like I ever have. Yeah. And you'd think, somebody that lose a couple of children and, go, how could God do that? Well, natural laws work in regular ways.
Right.
And the water that we drink and swim in can drown us. And if you go, well, I wish that He could make water that you could drink and swim in that couldn't drown. Okay, tell me how that works.
Right.
So, once as you begin to pull that apart, it falls apart.
So really, for people that are suffering and in a sense blaming God, I think you might say, well, this is a instance where we have to be really careful. We shouldn't just bash them with arguments. But nevertheless, there are faulty assumptions which they're operating under.
You started off by mentioning about, that we need to weep and be compassionate. When people have just had a loss, and I'm glad we have a chance just a moment to talk about this, but when somebody's just had a loss, like they've lost a child or lost a loved one, that's not when you start giving apologetic arguments.
Yeah, don't be like Job's friends.
No, that's not the time. The Scripture says, "Weep with those who weep."
Yeah.
And Christians too often resort to just, it's going to be fine. God's in control.
Right.
It's not that those things aren't true, but what that's doing is saying your tears and your heartache isn't legitimate. Jesus even wept with, over Lazarus' death. Right. I mean, just loving people. But now, that being said, there does come a time where those people are ready to go. So what really happened here? Yeah. What's God doing? But I'm just saying, immediately, no, not right away.
All right, I want to ask you one last question here. So I know a recent thing, the passing of Nabil Qureshi, a Christian apologist. Why would God, who wants Muslims to come to a Christian salvific belief, why would God take away a good man like him?
Wow, yeah, that's really become a huge issue. And sadly, I've seen some people, some Christians go, this has weakened my faith.
Yeah.
That I've been hurt.
Right.
Well, I have several things to say about this.
Okay.
First of all, in a very real sense, it didn't weaken anybody's faith. And what I mean by that is it weakened their false beliefs in the way God works in the world.
Okay.
Because God never promised. See, there's this kind of thing of God didn't promise that you're going to live or me.
Right.
That's not there.
Yeah.
Look it up. Go through the Bible and see if there's an age where God said he's going to let you live. Also, God didn't say, well, yeah, but if you're really a good minister, I'm not going to let you die. It doesn't say that either.
Yeah.
It's not anywhere.
That's right. And Nabil seemed to really understand this.
Yeah, no,
he didn't buy into the hokey pokey about needing more faith for healing, and he didn't buy into other hokey pokey that if you just keep praying then it'll happen. And of course he did request prayer.
Well, yes, and of course, and I would, when I had cancer, I asked for people to pray for me, and of course, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But so God didn't promise that he would live to a certain age. And also, I think people need to understand, he was a very, very useful apologist when it came to Muslims. He was really good at it, really blessed and good.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something. You start looking at the tens and tens of thousands of people that were watching, viewing his blogs, and responding to his books, and I'm sure buying his books because, they're selling well. I happen to know this for a fact. I looked on Amazon. His books are selling well. I'm not sure, it's not clear to me that God may not even do more through his death when it comes to accomplishing things for the kingdom than through his life. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but it might be. We don't know. But tens of thousands, I think, of people. People that didn't know anything about apologetics know about, when I talk to people that don't really know any, they're not apologetized as some people kid, but they knew about this situation, churches. Right. But anyway, so who knows?
The Lord is using this sad instance of suffering in the world, and he's bringing about a great good from it.
Yes, and not only that, but there is a good, and I actually blogged on, I did a Facebook thing on this, and I did blogs on prayer for healing. I just did 3 blogs on prayer for healing. But one of the things is that I put on quite a thing on Facebook is there's one lesson that we don't want to face about Nabil Qureshi's death, and that is you are not safe. And that's a big one. And you go, and even if you are a faithful servant of Christ, you're not safe.
Right.
Natural laws work in regular ways, and we live in a fallen world, and you need to just continue to honor God as Nabil did. To the end, you need to just honor God to the very end of your life.
Yeah.
And so who knows what other lessons are going to be? We could go on, but anyway, I think that's the gist of it.
Well, Clay, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Pleasure, Kurt.
If you're interested to learn more and read more about Clay's views, you can purchase his book, Why Does God Allow Evil? Compelling Answers for Life's Toughest Questions. And you also blog regularly at clayjones.net.
Correct.
Great. So that does it for our short episode today. Next week you can catch us with the full length back at our office studio. And so I will see if I can do the closing right here. So I want to thank the partners that we have, the patrons that support us, chip in a few bucks a month. I want to encourage you again to do that. Become one of our patrons. And I'm also grateful for the sponsorships that we have with our partners, Defenders Media, Consult Kevin, The Sky Floor, Rethinking Hell, the Illinois Family Institute, Evolution 2.0, Fox Restoration, and Nonprofit Megaphone. And last but not least, I want to thank you for listening in and for striving for truth on faith, politics, and society.
You've been listening to Veracity Hill, striving for truth on faith, politics, and society. This is a listener-supported program. For more resources, including past shows, visit veracityhill.com.